Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock, Jeff Upson with you here. Jeff, it's been a few weeks since we've gotten on the mic to chat about wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, stuff happens. Life happens, and I kids don't want to sleep, and I got to work. So sometimes my job does not allow me to get off, and unfortunately, that means our show sacrifices. But we've got a really good show here tonight. We came back just in the nick of time because we have a lot to break down with the team tournament. I'm excited to talk to Phil. And this is like our annual ritual of talking to him after the brackets come out. So looking forward to that because this year was a little crazy.
Yeah, they definitely had one of their tougher times here. I'm interested to get his take. So we'll get Phil Mary on the horn to chat with us a bit. Let's tell you the seeds in case you haven't had a chance to look at the brackets. In AAA, Waynesburg gets the top nod. They're the top seed. Mac number 2, Butler number 3, Connellsville number 4, West Allegheny number 5, Trinity number 6, Latrobe number 7, and Plum comes in at number 8. In Double A on the other side, Burgettstown comes in as the number 1 seed in this one. The 2 seed coming out is going to be Quaker Valley. The number 3 seed is Burrell. For the number 4 seed, it is Highlands. The number 5 seed is Fraser. The number 6 seed in Double A, we have Laurel. Number 7 is McGee. And number 8 is Montour. So we're going to grab Phil Mary to talk about how
All
the
right, I think
brackets.
we got Phil here.
Hi guys.
Phil, thanks for
Good
joining
evening.
us.
How are you guys doing this evening?
Wonderful. How are you?
Well, past my bedtime. I know that. It's all good. All good.
Phil, I know that's not true. Come on, this is not
Hey,
past your bedtime. You're up.
not not
You're still up looking at the comments, and you're looking at all
not
all that stuff, right?
exactly. It's this time of the year kind of keeps you up a little later.
Well, Phil,
Exciting times.
let's talk a little bit about the brackets, and we'll actually start in Double A, Phil. That was probably the easier of the two to kind of put together for you guys. Obviously, the top 3 kind of same, right? Burgettstown, Quaker Valley, Burrell. How did the discussion go to decide who was 1, who was 2, and who was 3?
You know what? Actually, they were both equally tough at the top. With Bardstown, Quaker Valley, and Burrow. I mean, you got a case for Quaker Valley, who's a returning champ and has done great things. And there was a lot of momentum for Burgettstown after, the job they did at Tricata. And just, they've got a very solid lineup. So they've had, winning Tricata with Mac and Trinity and Waynesburg and coming out there with 9 place winners. It was kind of impressive. And that guy gave them a lot of momentum for us to see them number 1.
And Phil, from there, when you look at the 2 then going to Quaker Valley, so obviously 3 with Burrell, 2, 3 doesn't matter all that much. But where did you go from there? I mean, from 4, 5, did it seem like it just kind of fell into place once you figured out who was getting that top seed?
Yeah, it was tough throughout that middle. Highlands has had a great year. I think they have 1 loss, and they've had a great year. I think it's first time they've won a section title, and Fraser's right there also. We know what a great program they're building down there, and with the Lawrence boy, and but yeah, nothing was easy in Double A either. I mean, it was pretty tough throughout, but we've got a great committee. We've got 13, 14 guys in there, and and we're in there hammering away trying to do what's best, and you're gonna please a lot of people, and you're gonna upset a lot of people.
And Phil, we talked about how Double A was probably a lot easier than Triple A, but I'm sure there were still some probably lively conversations that were going on in Double A, were there not?
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a committee, we looked at there's not a lot of head-to-head.
Right.
You know, when AAA there was a lot, you know, but Burgestown Quaker, they don't wrestle, no Burl, no, you know. So we got to look at other things, and we got to go back and we got to compare some common opponents or just some scores of people in programs we know. You know, and to be honest with you, we kind of thought that, you know, and we understand it's a lot about matchups. You know, we've all been a part of that committee for a long time, and we looked at some of Quaker Valley's wins, and, you know, a win over Montour 29-28. You know, that just, you know, didn't stick out very well to us. You know, and just a lot, you know, and it's because it is tough, and you know, you're looking at common opponents, and you know, you start into tournaments, and you go from there. You know, but again, the Burgestown put themselves at the top because of the job they did at Tri-Canada, and we talked about last year because a lot of people supported last year, and we know that one of their best kids, Sweeker, was out last year, and that hurt them. As you guys know, in Double A, and even in Triple A anymore, you take one guy out, and that's a big swing. And you know, once we start talking about Triple A, you'll really see the difference there. And so, yeah, there was a lot of.
You know, Phil, I'm just excited because we're potentially going to see a rematch from last year, Burl and Quaker Valley. Quaker Valley, of course, snapped Burl's win streak there, but that was a 30-28 match, I think it was last year in the finals of District 7. So it's kind of sets the tone here for Char Houston. It's like, okay, we're going to have some pretty good semifinals. I would agree with you. Those top three, I think were pretty. You could have interchanged those top three anyway, and you still there was a case for all three of those. It to me was the fourth team who was going to be the number 4, and you know, I think Highlands was a solid choice. I think they have had a really good year thus far, so I'm not surprised to see that see them be at the 4.
Yeah, we you know, everybody, and we also like to, when it, I don't want to say when it's convenient, but we also like to recognize the section champs.
Yeah. And
when you're a section champ, we think you deserve a little extra, and that definitely weighed into our decision, them being 4th.
Well, if we're looking on the other side to you talked about how you had a lot of matches against each other to outwit the seeds. I don't know how much it helped because a lot of times those teams that lost had injuries, so you didn't really get the full picture of those teams. So talk about, you know, just I guess overall the discussion, because I mean, Jeff and I were talking about it's wide open in AAA this year. There's a number of teams that could come out and win the title. It'd be hard to seed it.
You know what? It was kinda. I think there was overwhelming support for Waynesburg. You know, we felt that, you know, at different times throughout the year they were down. You know, Mac Church didn't wrestle, or Simone was out of the lineup, or, you know, something like that. You know, but at the end it looked like recently they'd gotten out. And we there really wasn't much discussion on number 1, to be honest with you. As a committee, we were pretty solid on Waynesburg being our top.
Where did you go from there? How did you come up with Can-Mac as the number 2?
They beat Connellsville, who we got a lot of respect for. They lost a 3-point decision to Waynesburg. So that kind of was pretty easy. I mean, and you know, as you guys know, we'll talk about them next. Butler being the 3rd seed, you know, they threw a wrench into things because they had a great year. You know, I mean, they beat a lot of good teams, but they beat a lot of good teams in close matches. So it was kind of easier for us as a committee to say, you know, a Can-Mac who's beat up, you know, other than, you know, beating Connellsville, they beat some pretty good teams, and they beat them pretty handily. So it really was a pretty. It kind of progressed into, well, this team beat this team, and we like this team, so it wasn't as tough as you might think it was, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Phil, it's funny you say that, because I remember when I updated state rankings team rankings after Butler beat Waynesburg 40-32, I had somebody comment and said, well, what gives. Butler beat Waynesburg 40-32, and I had to remind them. I'm like, look, they gave up 12 points right off the bat. They forfeited 33 and they forfeited 45. So to me, Mac Church is probably going to get 6. Simone against Gavin Rush probably going to get at least 4. So that's a change, right? That's a change, and it's reassuring to know that the committee looks at that, and it's reassuring to hear that you said 1 wasn't really too much of a thought, right? Because Waynesburg really, as they've progressed through the year, has been the top team.
Yes.
So
yeah, and again, I mean, we've got a lot of respect for what they do down there.
Cannon Mac was the interesting one to me, because they definitely, like you said, they've had a tough schedule. They lost by 3 points to Waynesburg earlier in the year, but they beat a really decent Hempfield team. They beat them up 40-24. I was surprised at that wide of a gap. But then at the Connellsville Duels, as you mentioned, they beat up Connellsville 40-31. Now Connellsville was without a couple of their guys, but that's still a pretty convincing win. So my question was, okay, when you look at the bracket, where does Butler fit in? That was, to me, you said it was a wrench, and I 100% agree with you. Butler was a wrench because they came in undefeated, section champs. What was the discussion like with Butler? Like, where do you knew they weren't going to be 1, but where was the questions? I'm sure there was folks that probably wanted to see him more at a 4 or 5, and some that wanted to see more him at a 3 or 2.
100%, Jeff. And because initially, it was Butler was thrown out as possible 2. And I was like, man, I'm not really sold on that. And then, once we got into 3, there was a lot of discussion because, that 3 and 4 is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 3, you're with the 2, as everybody knows. And a lot of discussion with them at Connellsville. And at the end, the committee went with Butler, and it was a lot of discussion on that. Because again, we do know that Butler was without 1 wrestler, I believe, when they wrestled Cannon Mac. So we knew that was really that was the biggest discussion, was 3 and 4.
Right. And you look at the balance here. The balance of this team tournament is like any other I've seen, at least in the last decade. I feel like it's so well balanced. You look at the quadrants. I hate to say it, but in years past, anybody really could sit down and say, all right, these 4 are going to definitely advance on. It was pretty easy. And now this year, it's like you look at that Connellsville quadrant. You got Pine Ridge and West Allegheny, Franklin Regional, Connellsville. I think that's a very balanced quadrant there. And you even go down further to Latrobe, Norwin, Cannon Mac, and Penn Trafford, Kiski. I think that's balanced. I think Latrobe is likely the favorite from the top half, and Cannon Mac, that's Cannon Mac has a tough road. They're going to have to beat either Penn Trafford or Kiski, and then a Latrobe or Norwin, and then they're going to have to either find a Trinity, Hempfield, or Butler likely. So, I mean, the balance here is just really, really unlike what we've seen in years past. That had to be exciting for the committee as well.
100%. I mean, you know what? Just to add on to a little bit of what you're saying, we're talking about a Connellsville team as a 4th seed to beat the 1 seed.
Yeah, right.
We're talking about, and then you fall all the way down to Hempfield at 11, who is the 11th seed, and last night went down to the final match with Connellsville.
Right.
And then you look at Pine Richland as a 12 seed. They lost 36-30 to a 3 seed.
To a 3 seed, right.
Yeah, so it's wide. And if Latrobe's healthy, which we're not real sure of, look out for them. They could easily be in the finals of Waynesburg.
Right, and I think you and I have talked about this in the past, but the injuries this year. I mean, have we seen a full lineup? Right, that was kind of the question on everybody's mind. Was what's a full lineup look like? What's a healthy lineup look like for these teams? Because when they're all healthy, they're all completely different teams. I mean, you take away Mac Church and Joe Simone, that's a different team. You take away Jacob Layton from Collinsville and Ethan Ansell, it's a different team. Just the head scratching of like, oh my gosh, this, this team wasn't healthy. Latrobe, they were missing Kilkeary and Roth. Okay, is Roth going to come back? We don't know.
Right.
There's so many question marks, and it's like I said to Greg, I don't envy being in that room with you trying to figure out the seeds here, because there was just a lot of discussion points, I'm sure.
Well, and like I said, I mean, I'm the lucky one here to be talking to you guys, but again, it's a committee decision, and if anybody knows any of the guys on the committee, we always say that there isn't a committee out there that works as hard as the wrestling committee.
Yeah.
From seating to working events, and I think we all love our sport of wrestling, and we try to do what's best for it.
Well, we appreciate you always joining us, Phil, afterwards, because we always like to hear how you guys broke it down, and you couldn't have said it better. I mean, the committee, we love every one of you guys, and appreciate all you guys do for the sport. And that's one thing about the WPIAL. We always have that ability to get those seeds, and it seems like we are always right. So we appreciate it.
Well, we trust and we appreciate what you guys do promoting our sport.
Well, not a problem, Phil. And thanks again for joining us. And you should get to bed now, since you mentioned it's passionate.
Oh, Phil,
I got to get my PA power gear ready for my trip to Penn State tomorrow.
That's right.
There
brother.
we go.
That's right. I told you you set yourself up for that one, saying I had to go to bed early. But I love it. Phil.
I understand.
I can't wait to. We'll see each other very soon. All right.
You got it. I appreciate all you guys do. Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, Phil.
Take care. Good night.
Always good talking to Phil, Jeff.
Always good talking to Phil. And I love the insight that he had there. And some of the things that he had mentioned with the teams and the discussions. And he said it. Butler was the wrench. Having that win over Waynesburg, but then Collinsville being in Waynesburg, then Collinsville losing to Cannon Mac. At the end of the day, I think they made difficult decisions, but ultimately I think it was the fair. I think they were fair. There's no, I don't want to use the word right, because there's no such thing as right. These are still opinion based on observable facts, right? So I don't want to say, there's a right equation or right formula to this, because there's not. What I would say is these seeds are fair. There's very fair when you look at just the body of work of some of these teams and just some of the results. Like he said, they definitely look at the tournament results, and they definitely look at the the head-to-heads and the quality of, or how much you're beating a team by. So and we are, and I say we meaning the WPIAL, but District 7 is very spoiled, because most districts don't have what the WPIAL has. They don't have a committee that is going to meet for a couple hours, and that's only the day of, not to mention before, to have discussions. I mean, I was having discussions with some of the committee members a week ago, 2 weeks ago, about what the landscape looked like. They're constantly trying to talk to people and figure out what who's in, who's out. Other districts don't do that. And not saying they're lazy, not saying that they don't try as hard, but I think there's a lot of pride here in the WPIAL to get it right.
Yeah, no doubt about it. At the end of the day, the top three that go on to the state tournament may not be 1, 2, and 3 and how they're seeded. But like we said, we don't know how they're all going to match up. So they did their very best in figuring out based off of the team so far, and what teams are going to have full strength in their lineup to put it together the best they could. And at the end of the day, you wrestle to wrestle. And, to me, I don't know if we're going to see – I actually don't think we're going to have 1, 2, and 3. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
But I think it's all dependent on the health of everybody. So, I mean, you look at, for instance, in the beginning of the season, right, you and I talked about how Latrobe looks like that team that might end Waynesburg's run. I mean, they just look that stacked. They're strong, solid throughout. But they didn't have Kilkeary for a while. They didn't have Nate Roth. Trinity knocks them off. That puts Trinity onto the map. they beat them by so many points that even with Kilcarry and Roth, Latrobe still may not win.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, you have Trinity ahead of Latrobe, and they look at that kind of stuff. But Nate Roth wrestled last night. Vinny Kilcarry wrestled yesterday. So they're back.
Right.
So to me, Latrobe as a 7 looks very, very strong. Trinity as a 6, to me, they lost against Waynesburg. But if we're talking about Waynesburg being the top team, the IT team, which I think they are because they're healthy, Trinity looks like they could still be dangerous too. So then they're the 6-7 seeds.
Right. And you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Greg, with the health, right? And they can't, I mean, they are limited in knowing, all right, this guy's going to be going, this guy's not, Nate Roth. So I think the key guys in the team tournament, right? Because we always talk about the teams, but I want to talk about individuals. Some of the individuals that are going to be key components to which teams are advancing through. Number one is Joe Simone from Waynesburg. When Joe Simone's in the lineup, Waynesburg's a different team. Joe Simone has been kind of in and out, and it seems like he's been out more than he's been in the last few years. And I know last year with Xander, there was some weight shifting there, and I know there's some injuries there, and Joe was at the Surge and had a really good tournament there. But we just haven't seen a whole lot of him. But we know that when he's in the lineup, that's a completely different team. He's a top 10 guy in the state, right? Another guy being Nate Roth, right? Nate Roth is that dude that coming up through, and this is what people don't realize, or some people don't realize, is that coming up through the PJW ranks, Nate Roth was the talk, right? It wasn't Vinny Kilcarry. Vinny Kilcarry was good, but he was very much, I would say, undersized, right? Nate Roth was the buzz. We hosted the kickball tournament up in Forest Hills, and Latrobe was there. This was back when Mike Ciotti was there still, and Nate Roth was going to be a freshman, and it was everyone was talking about him, or excuse me, he was in 8th grade I think then, but everyone was talking about Nate Roth, right? He's had some very unfortunate circumstances happen to him and his body to the point where he's not able to compete nearly at the point where he probably should be, right? But if he's back in the lineup, let's not forget last year when he returned to the lineup, he pinned or he beat a returning state champion, Briar Priest. So that to me shows the level of where he's at. If he's in the lineup for Latrobe, as he was last night, it's a completely different complex there, right? That's just another weapon that you're going to have to account for and have a defense for, because it changes the complexity of the match.
So you look at AAA, Jeff. Look at the quadrants first, but how you see it shaking out.
I'm with you. I don't think the seeds will necessarily hold. I think so. So you look at the top quadrant. I definitely think Waynesburg comes out of that. The 1 seed definitely is a little bit more favorable with the quadrants here. I think Waynesburg's going to come out from that. I really like the North Allegheny Plum matchup there. We got to see both those teams at the Allegheny County tournament this past weekend. Plum, they had a couple guys come back. Nino Walker entered the lineup at 172. He was down at 126 last year and all the way up to 172 this year. Beat Mark Gray in his first match back. Ended up being second at the county tournament. So Plum, and they have flexibility. So Plums can move some folks around. So I think that's a really good first round match. But ultimately, I think Waynesburg comes out of that one. The one that intrigues me the most is West Allegheny and Connellsville. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I do think Waynesburg or West Allegheny gets past Pine Richland. I do believe Connellsville to get past Franklin Regional. I know Matt Leaby's probably going to text me and be like, "What the heck, man? Why are you?" Shout out Matt Leaby, WVU, but. I do believe Connellsville is probably going to come out from that. Now, West Allegheny and Connellsville, I don't know, man. It's going to come down to, so both teams are not their strongest point is not their upper weights. So I'm talking from like 72 up. Now, of course, West Allegheny can bump around a little bit with their guys, but I think who wins 89 through heavyweight, that is the determining factor in this dual meet. We know each team each team has its weapons, but West Allegheny has some nukes, right? They've got a murderer's row with Nico Taddy, Ty Waters, and Sean Taylor. There's no better three trio in the state than those three. So you have that, but then you have, Cooper Smith as well. You have Nick Jones. You have some guys that are gonna, win most of their matches that they step out on the mat for. So Connellsville, on the other hand, a little bit more well balanced, right? They're pretty solid from top to bottom, but they don't really have that big gun. Lonzie Velma is certainly very good. So is Jacob Layton. But they're going to need to win some close matches, and I think they're going to have to win them up top.
Yeah, it's going to be a very great matchup for sure. And I agree with you, Waynesburg coming out of that top quadrant. Connellsville. So which one are you going with? So you didn't really give a prediction. I think
it was such a political answer. I was like Kamala Harris. I was just like, I'm gonna say words and hopefully you interpret an answer out of that. You're gonna put me on the spot, man. I got Bill Swink looking at me. I got Justin Waters looking at me. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know, man. Gun to my head, I'm gonna say West Allegheny. I just call me crazy. Call me crazy. I think gun to my head, West Allegheny, I think finds a way. I don't know though. That one to me is very much a toss up. Very much a toss up. So you got it. Now Bill Swink's gonna hate me forever.
I'll go opposite ends, so that way then they only hate you, and then they'll West Allegheny can hate me because I'll go Connellsville on the other side. But I think what happens is you got those hammers, but Connellsville might be able to keep the bonus points down a little bit because they have some very good wrestlers going up against them. So, because you said that they're balanced, they're not guys that are just going to go out there and lay on the mat, give 6 points to the studs. So, can they get some bonus points from other guys? I think it's going to be the question, and are they 100% healthy? But I'm gonna roll with Connellsville. It's a true toss up right there.
For sure.
Let's go down to the bottom half though, Jeff. You got Butler as the number 3 seed. You got Trinity Hempfield, which is going to be a heck of a match at the 6 o'clock at Butler. How do you see this one shaking out?
Oh man, now you got my family involved. Now my dad's probably like, son, you better say the right thing. You better support the Hillers. You've been high on the Hillers all year, right? Yeah, I think Butler beats PT. I think Butler comes out from that top. And I do believe Trinity to beat Hempfield. But I'm not confident on that either. Like Hempfield, Vince DeAugustine, and I've said this to Vince. I mean, his team is very inconsistent. There's times when you're like, when they wrestled Kane and Mac, they just got whooped. I mean, they just got out wrestled in basically every position. There just wasn't a lot, and I know he was very disappointed after that dual meet. But Trinity, on the flip side, I feel like they looked really good at the beginning of the year, but then they had some injuries. They had some guys, out of the lineup for a little bit. TJ Allison is back in. They had some shuffling of some guys. Ultimately, though, I think Trinity still has enough. So this is where it's much different than a West Allegheny and Connellsville, because Trinity, for the most part, they're pretty solid from 89 to 285. Nicolella at Kale at 89. You've got Mason Keir at 215 and Ty Banco at 285. So you have these consistent guys. Then you have Blake Reener, TJ Allison, Robbie Allison, and Bodie Morgan, of course. So those guys, I think, are going to have to carry them through. So I do believe Trinity is going to have their hands full with Hempfield, but I do believe Trinity does find a way to win that one. And then Trinity Butler is an interesting one, right? Because both these teams wrestled Waynesburg. Waynesburg beat them, what was that, Wednesday, right? That was yesterday.
Yep.
Waynesburg won 39-27, right? And that was kind of the first time we've seen Waynesburg, I'll call it full strength. Kai Sheptick was able to get a big win over Fedorchak. We had, you had some of the guys that hadn't been in, like Joe Simone in, Mac Church in, Nate Jones got in there. The one guy that was out was Stevenson, and I'm not sure what his status is for the postseason. And Roan Tustin wasn't in as well. So I think they have some flexibility there with Roan Tustin. ultimately, though, Butler is just so consistent, so solid. Like they have their hammer and Slobita and also in Donald, but they're just really good from top to bottom. I'm going to say Butler. And I know my dad's going to disown me, but I don't know. I just got a feeling.
Trinity's always that question mark with the health, right? And I agree with you. I think they get it done against Hempfield, but it's going to be close. But I also think, and I'm going to be at Butler on Wednesday, so I'm sure, the Butler faithful listening in are wondering what I'm thinking here. But I like Trinity. I like Trinity to come out on top. Again, some true toss-up matches, so it could go either way. But I just like the way Trinity's been wrestling all year round. All year, I think it's just a matter of health at the end of the day, and I think they do get it done. And you mentioned it's something we haven't talked about. Is Roan Tustin, because got a chance to talk to Kyle Shethik, head coach of Waynesburg, about Roan because of how well he wrestled at that tournament and at the Tri-County. And the problem for him is, right, he's the same weight as Rocco Welsh.
Yeah.
He's a guy who is in your the PA Power top freshman, incoming freshman report. But if he can't bump up, right? Because 89, they have a stud. 215, they have a stud. 285, so they're loaded at the top half. So he has nowhere to go. So I asked him, can he go down? And he is certified to go down. It's just a matter of, does Roan want to go down? It's got to be something where he's got to mentally want to do it to go down a weight class. If by some chance, which may be why we did not see him wrestle, maybe he's on his descent plan going down. Yeah. And if that's the case, we may not see him on Wednesday. He might still be trying to descent down, where you might see him on Saturday, though. And he might be down at 160. And if he is, look out, because now Waynesburg's that much tougher to beat.
If he's down at 160, that's a game changer, I think. And maybe that is why he wasn't in. Maybe he is on his descent. So that's a good question. I mean, I know Kai Shethik likes to keep it close to the vest, but I mean, if he does come down, that does change some things. But here's the other thing. They've also inserted him at 72 and just bumped all the way up. Mako was a heavyweight. Evans goes up to 215, Rocco to 189. So, there's still that option as well if he doesn't come down. So I think their best team is with him in the lineup. It just depends on where that is. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. And you can still weigh him, even if he gets down to 160, you can still bump him to 72 and do that whole bump all the way up and, fill in 60 with, what you've been rolling out. But it'll be interesting to see for sure. Let's go down to the bottom quadrant, though, Jeff. Latrobe, Norwin, Penn Trafford, Kiski, Cannon, Mac. We talked a little bit about it already. And Nate Roth did wrestle yesterday. Kilkiri wrestled yesterday. Does this Latrobe team have what it takes to knock off Cannon, Mac?
Yeah, I mean, yes. The short answer is yes, they do. The long answer, will they? I don't know. So common opponents, right? Collinsville. So Collinsville beat Latrobe 31-30. Now, in that match, Nate Roth did not wrestle. He went out, but then got a forfeit at 139 to Vielma. So if he's in there, I think that clearly changes it. So if that was the case and Nate Roth wrestled, I think him and Lonzi's a toss-up match, but the winner of that one determines a dual meet, right? So Collinsville was close with Trinity. Canamac. They did have a couple guys out during that meeting at the Collinsville duels, but Canamac again, they're just. Canamac finds a way, right? But Latrobe is all the pieces may be coming together. Vinny's back. Jacob Braun is wrestling better than he was. Lucas Braun, I think, as well. I think he's wrestling a little bit better than than he was. Wyatt Schmucker's coming along. And they've got some studs, right? They've got some hammers with Kilkiri, Borio, Held, and of course Roth if he's in there. So on paper, I would say Canamac should win it, but I just don't know. Latrobe is very, very much up to the task. I think Latrobe beats Norwin, and I think Canamac will beat the winner of Penn Trafford and Kiski, which you can kind of flip a coin for that one. And Canamac, ultimately, I think Canamac is the one that comes out, but man, the Latrobe is, and this is where my soapbox begins. Okay, I'm going to get on the soapbox real quick for how much we love the WPIAL and we love Phil Mary and the committee. There's a very big suggestion that I have that I think could set the WPIAL apart, and that is full wrestlebacks from the quarters. So in District 3, shout out District 3, Central Dolphin just beat Cumber Valley tonight, so it's a good night. All is right in the universe. I definitely am not biased at all. But let's go Rams. You look at District 3 and what they do. District 3 team tournament, from the quarterfinals on, they have full wrestlebacks to third and fourth. Okay. The WPIAL, you have to make it to the semifinals, right? And that to me is a problem. Okay. Especially this year. There's no better year than right now in 2023 where there should be full wrestlebacks in the team tournament from the quarterfinals on, because you look at it, okay, West Allegheny, Connellsville, Plum and North Allegheny, Waynesburg, Butler, Trinity, Latrobe, Canamac. All those teams, if you win that first match, okay, you're in, and you lose, and maybe it's the seeding. Maybe you're saying, well, West Allegheny and Connellsville. West Allegheny and Connellsville could be, two of those teams could make it to Hershey, right? If there was full wrestlebacks. One of those teams could end up making it to Hershey. So my gripe is, I truly believe this year especially is a catalyst, perfect example of why there should be full wrestlebacks in the team tournament from the quarterfinals on. It's not that hard to do. You have the mats down already. Yeah, you may have to run a few rounds, but if District 3, right, are you going to let the WPIAL be outdone by District 3? I mean, that's you're not going to do that, right?
So thank you for your soapbox. And this is the year to do it. I think most years, though, you could definitely say, okay, the teams that made the semis there's 3 of the top 4. You might make an argument for one team that could have snuck in as the 4, but usually and it's because of the fact that you had those dominant 2 teams, maybe even a third, right? But you're right. This year, so much balance that you like Waynesburg as one of those 3, but 2 through 7, I would say, and that's not to discredit Plum because they've had a great year. I just don't know if they're quite into that conversation yet. But 2 through 7, you could shake them up and get 2 other PIAA qualifiers at any point in time.
And I know you said in most years, and you're right, most years maybe that is the case. But what's the harm in it, right? Is there a negative to it? And yeah, sure, maybe there's anytime you get on the mat, you have a chance for injury, you have a chance for something to go wrong, but ultimately aren't isn't that what we're there for? To get the best teams, in this case the 3 teams, out to Hershey, right? I don't know. I agree that maybe it wasn't necessary, or it wasn't quite as evident in years past. I would say this year, and you don't know what the future holds. You don't know, next year we could have the same thing, right? So why not do it, right? Again, show me a reason why that it shouldn't be done. And I don't want to hear the excuse, well, we've always done it this way, right? I mean, we used to drive Model Ts, right? We don't do that anymore. So all I'm saying is it probably should happen.
Well, you look at and I don't know what the landscape is for hosting at Pierce Township, but the semifinals on Saturday start at 10 a.m. I mean, you start the wrestlebacks at 8 a.m. and, you have the quarterfinal round, and then you have maybe another round at 10, and then you have the semis at noon, and, you could get it done, but it's going to be all day wrestling as opposed to 2 matches happening. So, but that's when it would have either that or you'd have a Friday, Saturday, either way, right, as far as that goes.
And District 3, Spring Grove High School has been hosting it for a couple years now, and they do their semifinals on Thursday. So it's Tuesday is their quadrant wrestling, Thursday is their semifinals, and then Saturday is the placement round. So they do split it up between that Tuesday, Thursday, and then Saturday is that final one.
Which I think the only issue is would be basketball with some of the hosting sites and all that kind of stuff. But
I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what that word is.
Yeah. Hey, I just heard the argument. Going back to the brackets though, Jeff, I like Latrobe over Cannon McMillan. So
wow.
To me, and I'll say this, I could even see Latrobe and Cannon, to further your argument and strengthen your argument, I could see Latrobe and Canamac being that 2-3 matchup. that you're seeing it in the quarterfinals, because to me, I just think Latrobe was getting strong at the right time and getting everybody back. So you look at my bracket, I'd have Waynesburg, Connellsville, Trinity, and Latrobe wrestling in the semis.
Good for you, man.
And obviously we got a show coming up before we get to the semifinals, so I guess we don't have to necessarily make our semis.
Easy there, easy. Let's keep some in the back pocket a little bit here.
Well, let's go switch over to AA, Jeff. On the other side, obviously we've talked about it. The top 3 teams seem to be the teams that are going to be headed to the semifinals, but not without a contest, right? Burgestown on their half, Carleton, Southmoreland, Mount Pleasant, Montour. Do like Burgestown getting there to the semifinals. On the bottom half, you got Burrell, Knox, Central Valley, Laurel, and I like Burrell to come out on top there. But you look at the other 2, and I say this because, first off, Fraser Hopewell, Indiana Highlands. I think Fraser Highlands will win, and that's going to be a heck of a match between Fraser and Highlands. Quaker Valley, Jeff Morgan, Freedom, and McGuffey. To me, don't sleep on McGuffey. I know Quaker Valley comes in as the WPIAL champs, but they're not blowing away teams in AA. I mean, they had a match they just won this yesterday. They beat Carleton 46-29.
Right.
And again, now Carleton is in the team tournament, but that's, if you're the number 2 team or one of the top 3 teams going to the state tournament, you would think you would be a team that would win by big in that match. So McGuffey's coming on strong. It wouldn't surprise me if they gave Quaker Valley a match.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it. Quaker Valley, they have not been blowing away teams, right? They beat Montour in a barn burner 29-28. Montour to me is kind of sitting in an interesting place. I mean, I don't think they get past Burgettstown, but them and Mount Pleasant should be a good match. Fraser beat Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant is certainly not the Mount Pleasant that they were last year, and but they're still in the mix. So I think Montour and Mount Pleasant is going to be a really good match. Montour, I was impressed with them at the county tournament this past weekend at Fox Chapel. I do really love that quadrant on the top half with Fraser, Hopewell, Indiana, and Highlands. I think Highlands and Fraser will get out there to the quarterfinals, but I think Fraser and Highlands, if Highlands can get, if like Braden White's in there, if Burford wrestles tough, I think those guys, Highlands definitely has some balance to them, but so does Fraser. We've been talking about it all season. Fraser's got a really nice team, and Buck Watkins has a couple guys that are just, out kicking their coverage, so to speak. So I'm really looking forward to that one. And I think you did mention with McGuffey and Quaker Valley is McGuffey's coming on at the right time. I talked to Jared Roberts a few times this year and this season, and he said his guys he's got a lot of young guys and they needed to be battle tested a little bit. And I think they have started to get a little bit more battle tested. So I agree, don't sleep on McGuffey. I do expect Quaker Valley to come through, but I think Burrell is ultimately the team here. Burrell, this is their time. They did what we expected them to do. They went up to the ultimate duels, and that was, talk about team rankings. I'm still trying to do AA team rankings, and it's been a week because it's been nuts. So Burrell goes 1-3 at this is so Burrell. They go 1-3 at the ultimate duels. They lose to Fort LaBeouf 36-19. They beat Reynolds 31-24. They lose to Brookville 31-25 and lose to Chestnut Ridge 37-24, right? Reynolds then comes back and beats half those teams, right? So, and you look at the standings, Brookville was 3-1, Burrell was 1-3, Reynolds was 1-3. It was super weird. But ultimately, I think Burrell is the team here. I think they get past Quaker Valley, and I think they're into the finals with Burgettstown in a match that many people thought was going to be the finals last year too.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Gavin Sweeka's injury, it probably would have been. So, and I would have loved to have seen that matchup take place. Who do you like between Fraser and Highlands? I know you said both are pretty even, just like you did to the 4-5 in AAA. I'll throw your leash. I'll throw it out to you. I'm gonna go with Fraser. And I think Buck Watkins and his team gets it done. Super hype man, right? And Buck Watkins, I think he's gonna get his team ready to go and pull off the win there.
Yeah, I mean, my gut says Frazier. It really does. But yeah, I'll go Frazier. I'll go Frazier. So there you go.
So we got Burgestown, Fraser, Burrell, and Quaker Valley as the semifinalists, and 4 teams qualifying AA for the PIAA tournament this year. So big matchup here in Highlands to qualify for the PIAA tournament.
Right.
And should be a fun one. And obviously, we'll be able to recap that for you next week to bring you the action as far as recapping the quarterfinal and get you set for the semifinals and the finals that are coming up on Saturday. And outside of that, Jeff, some good wrestling action coming up this weekend as well. As far as individual tournaments, you got the Fred Bell tournament, where a number of WPIAL schools will be wrestling, including Trinity. Can they stay healthy through that tournament to be able to wrestle McGuffey? Are they going to get themselves primed, ready to go? You got the Bedford tournament, where you'll see Burrell wrestling in that one, as well as Frazier, among others. And then you have the Ultimate Warrior tournament. Teams like Bentworth, Peters Township will be wrestling. And then you also have the Buckeye Local Panther Classic, where Chartiers Valley will be in that one. You have the Brook Classic, Seneca Valley heading down there. And then you have some dual meet tournaments, including the Sharon Duels, which is where Gavin Sweeka got hurt last year.
Right.
So I mean, the Vigilati brothers, maybe you guys just keep Sweeka on the bench this weekend just to make sure he stays healthy, and you guys can show everybody what you guys had last year as far as that goes. But obviously a number of WPIAL schools wrestling at the Sharon Duels.
Yeah, and we'll have coverage from the Ultimate Warrior tournament up at West Branch. Second year in a row, we'll be up there streaming the entire tournament, 5 mats there, and a really good balanced tournament. A lot of tough teams coming in there. Excited to see a potentially Chris Vargo and Cohen Bainey match. That's like the 5th time they've wrestled, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And this weekend's there's a lot of tough tournaments, a lot of good, even balanced tournaments with the Thomas tournament as well. Looking forward to this weekend. But we're now in the team tournament, right? We're now into the team portion where we're really gearing up towards who's going to make it to Hershey in the team race.
Yeah, really the last weekend of wrestling action for some individuals and everything like that. But then, yeah, we're right into teams coming up on Wednesday, and should be a lot of fun. And join us next week. We're going to recap, like I said, half the tournament and get you set for the semis and the finals. So make sure you join us next week for that. I want to thank Phil Mary for joining us, and as always, love having him recap how they came about with the seeds. But for Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. Thanks for listening in and watching into WarUp on the WPIAL.